exchange for mandatory anger management therapy. No previous psychological treatment, no emergency contacts listed. His lawyer had been evasive when scheduling, mentioning only that his client preferred discretion and would pay in cash. Red flags everywhere, but I've learned not to judge my patients before meeting them. Some of the most dangerous-looking men have turned out to be gentle souls pushed too far, while others who appear harmless hide darkness that takes months to uncover. A sharp knock interrupts my thoughts. Not the hesitant tap of someone nervous about therapy, but the confident rap of someone accustomed to having doors opened for them. "Come in," I call, straightening my shoulders and arranging my features into professional calm. The man who enters fills the doorway completely. Tall, easily 6'3", with the kind of presence that makes the small office feel suddenly cramped. Dark hair impeccably styled, expensive charcoal suit that probably costs more than I make in a month. But it's his eyes that catch me. Pale blue-gray, like winter ice, scanning my office with calculated assessment. He moves with predatory grace, each step deliberate and controlled. The scent of cedar and something darker, more dangerous, follows him into the room. His gaze sweeps over my diplomas on the wall, the worn furniture, the wilted plant by the window, cataloging everything with the thoroughness of someone accustomed to evaluating threats. "Dr. Morgan, I presume." His voice carries a slight accent I can't quite place, smooth as aged whiskey with an underlying edge that makes my pulse quicken involuntarily. "Mr. Torres." I gesture to the chair across from my desk. "Please, have a seat." He doesn't sit immediately. Instead, he continues his visual inventory of my space, and I find myself fighting the urge to fidget under his scrutiny. There's something magnetic about his presence. A dark charisma that demands attention, even as it sets off every warning bell in my head. When he finally settles into the chair, he doesn't simply sit. He claims the space, leaning back with casual confidence as if he owns not just the chair, but the entire building. His fingers, I notice, are long and elegant, though a small scar runs across his left knuckle. Another across his jaw, barely visible but there nonetheless. "So," he says, those pale eyes fixing on mine with unsettling intensity, "how exactly does this work? Do you expect me to lie on a couch and tell you about my mother?" There's mockery in his tone, but I've heard it before. Defense mechanisms come in many forms, and condescension is one of the most common. "We can start however you're comfortable," I reply, keeping my voice level. "Why don't you tell me why you're here?" A smile plays at the corner of his mouth, not reaching his eyes. "I think you already know that, Doctor. Court order, anger management, 20 sessions to prove I'm not a danger to society. Are you? A danger to society?" He tilts his head, studying me with renewed interest. That's a rather direct question for someone who's supposed to be helping me. I find honesty saves time. Honesty. He repeats the word like it tastes foreign on his tongue. An interesting concept. "Do you practice what you preach, Doctor Morgan?" The question feels loaded, though I'm not sure why. "What makes you think I don't?" Instead of answering, he shifts in his chair, and I catch a glimpse of something beneath his jacket. The subtle bulge that suggests he's armed. My mouth goes dry, but I force myself to maintain eye contact. "Tell me about the incident that brought you here," I say, consulting his file, though I've already memorized the sparse details. "Which incident would that be?" "The assault charge." His laugh is low, dangerous. "A misunderstanding. Someone forgot their manners. I reminded them. With your fists? Sometimes words aren't enough." The casual way he says it sends a chill down my spine. This man is used to violence, comfortable with it in a way that speaks to experience rather than random outbursts. "Do you often solve problems with physical force, Mr. Torres?" "I solve problems however they need to be solved." We stare at each other across my desk, and I'm acutely aware of how alone we are in this building. My next appointment isn't for 2 hours. Dr. Martinez left 20 minutes ago. The receptionist stepped out for lunch. But I've faced dangerous men before. Abusers, stalkers, men whose rage simmered just beneath polite facades. The key is never showing fear, never letting them sense weakness. That must be exhausting, I observe, always being ready for a fight. Something flickers in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, that I'm not cowering or trying to placate him. "You're not what I expected," he admits. "What did you expect?" "Someone older, more intimidated. Sorry to disappoint." That almost smile returns. I didn't say I was disappointed. The way he says it makes heat crawl up my neck, though I can't tell if it's from anxiety or something else entirely. There's something predatory in how he watches me, but also something appreciative, as if I've passed some test I didn't know I was taking. The session continues for another 30 minutes. He deflects most of my questions with questions of his own, turning our conversation into a verbal chess match where I'm constantly 2 moves behind. He's intelligent. I'll give him that. Dangerously so. When our time is up, he stands with fluid grace, straightening his jacket with movements that seem practiced. As he reaches for the door handle, he pauses, patting his pockets as if searching for something. "Damn," he mutters, pulling out a crisp $100 bill. It flutters to the floor between us, landing at my feet. I stare at the money, then at him. He's watching me with those pale eyes, waiting, testing. I bend down and pick up the bill, feeling the expensive paper between my fingers. For a moment, the office is completely silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic outside. Then I tear it in half. His eyebrows shoot up, genuine shock replacing his calculated composure. I tear it again, and again, until the $100 bill becomes confetti in my palm. "Mr. Torres," I say, my voice steady despite my racing heart, "if you want to test people's character with money, I recommend trying a casino. They love that sort of game. This is a psychology office, not a social laboratory. You pay for my consultation with a credit card or check, like any civilized person. I'll see you next Thursday at 10. I drop the paper pieces into my wastebasket and meet his stare directly, for the first time since he walked into my office. Vincent Torres is speechless. His mouth opens slightly, then closes. Those calculating eyes search my face as if trying to solve an impossible equation. Finally, he nods once. Next Thursday at 10. The door closes behind him with a soft click, and I sink back into my chair, only then realizing my hands are shaking. Through my window, I watch him walk to a sleek black sedan, where a large man in a dark suit holds the passenger door open. The car pulls away with expensive silence. I've just made either the biggest mistake of my professional career, or possibly my life. But as I stare at the scattered pieces of money in my trash can, I can't bring myself to regret it. The flowers arrive on Tuesday morning, 3 days after our first session. 24 white orchids arranged in a crystal vase that probably costs more than my monthly student loan payment. The delivery man apologizes for the early hour, but I suspect Vincent Torres doesn't care about conventional etiquette. There's no card, but I know who sent them. The extravagant gesture screams of a man accustomed to buying his way out of problems, or into people's good graces. I carry the arrangement to the waiting room and set it on the side table where other patients can enjoy it. By afternoon, Mrs. Chen from my 3 o'clock appointment is asking if she can take a few stems home. I tell her to take as many as she wants. Wednesday brings chocolates. Thursday, an envelope containing tickets to the symphony. Each gift more expensive than the last, each one finding its way to other patients or the donation bin at the local shelter. If Vincent thinks he can charm or buy his way through therapy, he's about to learn otherwise. Friday morning, I discover a woman in an expensive pantsuit waiting in my office when I arrive. She introduces herself as Rebecca Walsh, Vincent's assistant, and explains that he'd like to schedule additional sessions beyond his court-mandated requirements. Mr. Torres is very committed to his personal growth, she says with the practiced smile of someone paid well to manage difficult people. How committed? I ask, settling behind my desk. He's prepared to pay double your usual rate for twice-weekly sessions. I study her carefully. She's polished, professional, and clearly uncomfortable with whatever instructions she's been given. There's something desperate in how she delivers the offer, as if her employer doesn't handle rejection gracefully. Tell Mr. Torres that therapy doesn't work on an expedited schedule. I'll see him Thursday at 10, as originally planned. Relief flickers across her features before she masks it. I'll relay the message. After she leaves, I sit in the silence of my office and wonder what exactly I've gotten myself into. Men like Vincent Torres don't usually accept no for an answer. Yet here he is, attempting to negotiate therapy sessions like business deals. Thursday arrives gray and drizzling, the kind of Chicago weather that seeps into your bones. Vincent appears at exactly 10 o'clock, punctual to the second. Today, he wears a navy suit that fits like a second skin, his dark hair slightly damp from the rain. The scent of his cologne, something expensive with notes of bergamot and danger, follows him into the room. "Good morning, Dr. Morgan." He settles into the same chair as before, but his posture is different. Less territorial, more curious. "Good morning. Thank you for the flowers, chocolates, and symphony tickets. They found good homes." A smile tugs at his lips. "You gave them away." "I don't accept gifts from patients. Even beautiful ones?" The question hangs in the air between us, loaded with meaning I'm not sure I want to examine. He's watching me with those pale eyes, and I'm suddenly aware of how the gray light from the window catches the sharp angles of his face. "Especially beautiful ones," I reply, keeping my voice steady. He laughs, a genuine sound that transforms his entire expression. For a moment, the dangerous edge softens, revealing glimpses of the man beneath the intimidation. "You're full of surprises, Isabella Morgan." The way he says my first name sends heat spiraling through my chest. I hadn't given him permission to use it, hadn't told him to call me anything other than Dr. Morgan. Yet hearing it in his deep voice feels oddly intimate. "Let's focus on you, Mr. Torres. How was your week?" Enlightening. He crosses one ankle over the opposite knee, the movement casual but somehow predatory. "I spent considerable time thinking about our last conversation." "What specifically?" "Your reaction to my test." "You mean when you tried to bribe me?" "When I tried to understand what kind of woman I'm dealing with." The admission is more honest than I expected. I lean forward slightly, sensing an opening. "And what did you conclude? That you're either very brave or very foolish. Which do you think it is?" His gaze sharpens, studying me with renewed intensity. I'm still deciding. We fall into a rhythm over the next 40 minutes. He tells me stories, supposedly hypothetical scenarios about business deals gone wrong, partnerships that ended badly, competitors who pushed too far. Each story is laced with violence, testing my reactions, probing for the limits of my professional composure. I listen without judgment, occasionally asking clarifying questions that make him pause and reconsider his narratives. Slowly, patterns emerge. Themes of betrayal, abandonment, the crushing weight of responsibility. Beneath the carefully constructed scenarios, I glimpse fragments of truth. "In these hypothetical situations," I say during a lull, "the protagonist often seems to be protecting something, or someone." Vincent's fingers still on the arm of his chair. "What makes you say that?" "The violence isn't random. It's defensive, reactive rather than predatory. Perhaps the protagonist learned early that the world isn't kind to those who can't protect themselves." "How early?" The question catches him off guard. For a moment, his mask slips, and I see something raw and unguarded in his expression. Pain, quickly buried but not quickly enough. "Hypothetically, if you prefer." 8 years old. The protagonist's mother died, and he learned that the people who promise to keep you safe often fail. My chest tightens at the vulnerability in his voice. This isn't hypothetical anymore. This is truth, offered like a gift, wrapped in razor wire. That's a heavy burden for a child to carry. Children adapt, they survive. Surviving isn't the same as healing. He's quiet for a long moment, those pale eyes distant. When he speaks again, his voice is softer. "You talk as if healing is possible for everyone. Don't you think it is? I think some wounds are too deep to close completely, but they can stop bleeding." Our eyes meet across the desk and something passes between us. An understanding, fragile and dangerous. He sees that I'm not afraid of his darkness, and I see that beneath his carefully constructed armor lies a man who's been bleeding for 24 years. The moment stretches, electric with unspoken possibilities. I'm acutely aware of everything about him. The way his shirt fits across his broad shoulders, the slight curve of his mouth when he's thinking, the intensity of his gaze that makes me feel exposed and seen in equal measure. My pulse quickens, and I know I should look away. should re-establish professional distance. Instead, I find myself leaning closer, drawn by something I don't want to name. Vincent notices. His eyes darken, and I see his chest rise and fall more rapidly. The air between us thickens with tension that has nothing to do with therapy and everything to do with the dangerous attraction crackling like electricity whenever he's near. Then my phone buzzes with a text, breaking the spell. I glance at it automatically. My next appointment confirming their time. When I look up, Vincent's expression has closed off again. Professional distance restored like a wall between us. Our time is up, I say, though I can hear the breathlessness in my own voice. He stands with that fluid grace I'm beginning to recognize, straightening his jacket with practiced movements. At the door, he pauses and turns back to me. Dr. Morgan? Yes? You're the first person who's ever told me wounds can stop bleeding. He leaves without another word, and I'm left staring at the closed door, my heart hammering against my ribs. Whatever this is between us, it's growing beyond my ability to control it. And the most dangerous part? I'm not sure I want to stop it. The Chicago Tribune lands on my kitchen table with a soft thud. Saturday morning, coffee steam curling around the business section headline that makes my blood run cold. Torino Industries closes multi-million-dollar development deal. Vincent Torres, Vincenzo Torino. The black and white photograph shows my patient shaking hands with city officials, his smile polished and professional. But it's the same face that's been haunting my thoughts for weeks. The same pale eyes that seem to see straight through every defense I've built. The same scar along his jawline that I've caught myself staring at during our sessions. I read the article twice, my coffee growing bitter as the pieces fall into place. Torino Industries. Real estate development. Ties to Chicago's Italian-American business community. The language is careful, diplomatic, but there are undertones. References to traditional family businesses, and old-world values that make my skin prickle with unease. My hands shake as I open my laptop and begin searching. The deeper I dig, the clearer the picture becomes. The Torino family has roots in Chicago dating back 3 generations. Legitimate businesses on the surface. Construction, restaurants, waste management. But underneath, whispers of connections that respectable newspapers won't print. Forum posts quickly deleted. Court documents sealed, investigators who suddenly transferred to other cases. By Sunday night, I've assembled a disturbing portrait. The Torino name appears in federal investigations dating back to the 1970s. Always peripheral, never central. Always protected by expensive lawyers and convenient alibis. The kind of family that throws charity galas while bodies wash up in Lake Michigan. Vincent Torres doesn't exist. He's a carefully constructed identity for a man whose real name carries weight I'm only beginning to understand. And I've been alone in a room with him for 3 weeks. I close the laptop and stare at my reflection in the black screen. 3 weeks of gifts and games and stories that I now realize weren't hypothetical at all. The violence he described, the betrayals, the protective instincts. All real, all dangerous. All sitting in my office every Thursday at 10 o'clock. Watching me with those storm gray eyes while I pretend to help him manage his anger. Sleep evades me Sunday night. I lie in my small apartment, listening to sirens wail through the Chicago streets, wondering what kind of man I've been treating, wondering what he's capable of, wondering why the thought sends heat racing through my veins instead of the terror it should. Monday drags by in a haze of routine appointments, but I can't focus. Every patient seems like a pale shadow compared to the intensity Vincent brings to my office. Mrs. Chen talks about her anxiety, but all I can think about is the way Vincent's fingers curve when he's thinking. Mr. Rodriguez describes his depression, and I find myself remembering the rough timbre of Vincent's voice when he mentioned his mother. By Tuesday, I've convinced myself I imagined the danger. By Wednesday, I'm rehearsing speeches about professional boundaries and appropriate patient relationships. By Thursday morning, I've memorized a dozen different ways to confront him, each one more inadequate than the last. He arrives precisely on time, as always. Today he wears a charcoal suit with a silver tie that brings out the storm gray of his eyes. The expensive cologne, bergamot and something darker, fills my office the moment he enters. The predatory grace, the way he commands space, the casual confidence that speaks of a man accustomed to having his orders obeyed. It all makes sense now. This isn't a successful businessman with anger issues. This is something far more dangerous. Good morning, Isabella. The use of my first name no longer surprises me, though it still sends heat racing through my veins like electricity through copper wire. Good morning, Vincenzo. He freezes halfway to his chair, those pale eyes sharpening with sudden attention. For a moment, the mask of Vincent Torres slips completely, revealing the predator underneath. His hand moves slightly toward his jacket before he catches himself, and I realize with a chill that he's armed. He's been armed every time he sat in my office. I see you've been doing research. It wasn't difficult. Your picture was in Saturday's Tribune. I keep my voice steady despite the way my pulse hammers against my throat. Quite a prominent feature in the business section. He settles into his chair with deliberate calm. But I can see the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers curve slightly as if reaching for something that isn't there. Every movement is controlled, calculated, dangerous. And what did you discover, Dr. Morgan? Enough to know that Vincent Torres is a fiction. Most identities are, to some degree. Not like this. I lean forward, meeting his gaze directly despite the warning signals firing through my nervous system. You're Vincenzo Torino. Your family has been in Chicago for 3 generations. You're not a businessman with anger management issues. You're something else entirely. What am I then? The question hangs between us, loaded with danger and possibility. I could back down now, retreat to safe professional distance, report him to the authorities and wash my hands of this entire situation. Pretend the last 3 weeks never happened. Instead, I say, you're a man who's been lying to me since the moment you walked into my office. A smile ghosts across his lips, and for a moment he looks almost boyish. Not lying, protecting. Protecting who? Me or yourself? Both. The honesty in his voice catches me off guard. I expected denials, threats, the kind of intimidation tactics I imagine men in his position employ. Instead, he's watching me with something that looks almost like vulnerability, as if my reaction matters more than it should. You could have disappeared. I point out. Changed your name again? Found another therapist? Paid off the court system to forget about your anger management requirements? Why didn't you? Because you tore up $100 bill and told me to behave like a civilized person. He leans forward, and I catch a hint of that dangerous cologne mixing with something uniquely him. Do you have any idea how refreshing that was? Refreshing? Most people either want something from me or they're terrified of me. You treated me like any other patient having a bad day. You are having a bad day. A very long, 24-year bad day. The observation hits its mark. Something flickers in his expression. Surprise, recognition, and something deeper that makes my chest tighten with an emotion I don't want to examine too closely. You still don't understand what you're dealing with, he says softly. Then explain it to me. I can't. Can't or won't. Both. He runs a hand through his dark hair, the perfect styling becoming slightly mussed. The gesture makes him look younger, more human. There are things about my world that once you know them, there's no going back to ignorance. And ignorance, Isabella, might be the only thing keeping you safe. The way he says my name, soft, almost caressing, makes heat pool low in my belly. This is dangerous territory, professionally and personally. I should end this session, refer him to another therapist, create distance before whatever this is between us grows beyond my ability to control it. But I don't want to. And that realization terrifies me more than anything in his file ever could. I'm not asking for details about your business, I say instead. I'm asking about the 8-year-old boy who lost his mother and decided the world wasn't safe. His mask cracks again, just slightly. For a moment, I see past the expensive suits and careful control to the child who learned too young that people leave and promises break. That boy learned to protect himself. And everyone else around him? When necessary. Even when it's destroying him from the inside out? We stare at each other across the desk, and I can feel the electric tension that's been building for weeks crackling in the air between us. He's beautiful in the way predators are beautiful. Dangerous, and magnetic, and utterly compelling. Every instinct screams that I should run. But a deeper part of me wants to stay, wants to understand the darkness behind those storm-gray eyes. You're not afraid of me. he observes, voice low and rough. Should I be? Yes. The word is barely a whisper. You should run from this office and never look back. But you don't want me to. No. His eyes darken, pupils dilating slightly. I don't. The admission hangs between us like a confession. My pulse pounds in my throat, and I'm suddenly aware of how alone we are. How the rest of the world has faded away until there's nothing but this man, and the dangerous electricity sparking whenever he's near. Vincenzo. His real name feels foreign on my tongue, intimate in a way that makes my skin flush. Say it again. The request catches me off guard. There's something raw in his voice, vulnerable in a way that makes my chest ache. Vincenzo. Better. He closes his eyes briefly, as if savoring the sound. No one's called me that in years. Not the way you say it. How do I say it? Like it belongs to a man instead of a monster. The pain in those words cuts through me like a blade. Whatever else Vincenzo Torino might be, he's also a man who sees himself as something terrible, something unworthy of gentleness. The fact that you're not Vincent Torres doesn't change anything, I tell him. You still need help processing your trauma. You still deserve to heal. Something shifts in his expression. Surprise giving way to something softer, more vulnerable than anything I've seen from him before. Even knowing who I really am, especially knowing who you really are. He's quiet for a long moment, those storm gray eyes searching my face as if trying to memorize every detail. When he speaks again, his voice is rough with emotion. Every woman I've ever known wanted either my money, my power, or was terrified of both. You're the first who wants to understand the person underneath. Maybe that's because I see the person you could be, not just the one you've had to become. The words hang in the air between us, honest and dangerous. He stands slowly, movements fluid despite the tension radiating from his frame. At the door, he pauses without turning around. Isabella? Yes? Be careful. Please. His voice is soft, almost pleading. My world has a way of destroying beautiful things. Then he's gone, leaving me alone with the echo of his words and the terrifying realization that somewhere in the last 3 weeks, Vincent Torres had stopped being just another patient and become something infinitely more dangerous. Something that might be worth the risk. The black sedan appears outside my apartment building on Friday evening, sleek and menacing against the amber glow of streetlights. I notice it from my third-floor window as I water my small herb garden, the same ritual I've performed every evening for 2 years. But tonight, something feels different. The car sits too still, too perfect, like a predator waiting. I tell myself I'm being paranoid. Chicago is full of expensive cars, and this neighborhood, while not wealthy, isn't completely devoid of success stories. But my hands shake as I close the blinds, and I can't shake the feeling that whatever world Vincenzo belongs to has finally noticed my existence. The car is gone by morning, but the unease remains. I catch myself checking over my shoulder during my Saturday grocery run, scrutinizing faces in the produce section, wondering if the man reading a newspaper by the coffee shop is really interested in current events or something else entirely. By Monday, I've almost convinced myself it was nothing. Almost. That's when Rebecca Walsh appears in my office again, her usual polished composure cracked around the edges. She closes the door behind her with more force than necessary, and I notice her hands trembling as she approaches my desk. Dr. Morgan, I need to speak with you about Mr. Torres. If this is about scheduling additional sessions... No. Her voice is sharp, urgent. It's about your safety. Ice floods my veins. I set down my pen carefully, forcing my expression to remain neutral despite the alarm bells screaming in my head. What do you mean? Rebecca glances toward the window, then back at me. There are people asking questions about Vincent's therapy arrangements. People who don't understand the nature of your professional relationship. What kind of people? The kind who don't ask politely. She leans forward, lowering her voice. Vincent wanted me to warn you. He's handling the situation, but until it's resolved, you need to be careful. Careful how? Stay aware of your surroundings. Don't deviate from your normal routines without letting someone know where you're going. And if you see anything unusual, cars, people who don't belong, call this number immediately. She slides a business card across my desk. It's plain white with only a phone number, no name or company information. Rebecca, what exactly is Vincent involved in? Her laugh is bitter. Nothing you want to understand, Dr. Morgan. Just trust me when I say that some people see his weekly appointments as a weakness to be exploited. After she leaves, I sit in the silence of my office, turning the card over in my hands. The rational part of my mind screams that I should report this to the police, should distance myself from whatever dangerous game Vincenzo is playing. But a deeper part, the part that's been captivated by storm gray eyes and vulnerable confessions, whispers that running now would be abandoning someone who needs help. Someone who might need me. Tuesday passes without incident, but I find myself hypervigilant, cataloging every face, every car, every shadow that seems out of place. When Vincenzo arrives for our Thursday session, he looks different. The expensive suit is the same, the controlled movements unchanged, but there's tension in his shoulders that wasn't there before. Dark circles under his eyes suggest sleepless nights, and I notice his hand resting casually near his jacket in a way that seems anything but casual. "You spoke with Rebecca," he says without preamble, settling into his chair with predatory grace. "She was concerned about my safety. She was right to be." The admission sends fear racing through my bloodstream, but also something else, something that feels dangerously like anticipation. "Tell me what's happening, Vincenzo." He studies me for a long moment, those pale eyes searching my face. "There's a family in this city who believes I've grown soft. They think my weekly visits to a therapist indicate weakness, vulnerability they can exploit." "The Benedetti family?" His eyebrows rise slightly. "You have been doing research." "I'm a fast learner. What do they want?" "Territory, influence, the usual things men kill for." His voice is casual, matter of fact, as if discussing the weather rather than murder. "They've decided that my apparent psychological dependence on you makes me an easier target." "Psychological dependence?" Something flickers in his expression. Their words, not mine. Are they wrong? The question hangs between us, loaded with implications neither of us is ready to acknowledge. His fingers drum against the chair arm, the only sign of agitation he allows himself. "That's a dangerous question, Isabella." "Why?" "Because if the answer is yes, it puts you in more danger than you can possibly imagine." Before I can respond, my office window explodes inward in a shower of glass and splintered wood. I throw myself sideways as gunfire erupts from the street below, automatic weapons turning my peaceful therapy space into a war zone. Vincenzo moves with inhuman speed, launching himself across the desk to cover my body with his own, as bullets tear through the air where I'd been sitting moments before. His weight presses me against the floor, solid and warm and alive, while chaos reigns around us. "Stay down," he growls against my ear, his breath hot against my neck. I feel, rather than see him reach inside his jacket, the metallic slide of a weapon being drawn. In the span of heartbeats, the man I've been trying to heal transforms into something lethal and terrifying. "How many?" I whisper, though I'm not sure why. 6. Maybe 7. His voice is calm, professional, as if he's conducting a business meeting rather than planning a counterattack. "They're amateurs. Benedetti's nephew thinks quantity compensates for quality." More gunfire peppers the wall above us, sending plaster raining down like snow. Through the shattered window I can hear shouting, car doors slamming, the squeal of tires on asphalt. "Isabella, listen to me carefully." Vincenzo's free hand cups my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. "When I move, you're going to crawl behind my desk and stay there until I come back for you. Do you understand? Where are you going?" To remind these idiots why people fear the Torino name. The smile that crosses his face is nothing like the careful expressions I've grown accustomed to in our sessions. This is something feral and dangerous, the predator finally unleashed. He rises in one fluid motion, and suddenly my quiet therapy office becomes a battlefield. I catch glimpses of him moving through the chaos, rolling behind my bookshelf as bullets shred the leather volumes, returning fire with precision that speaks to extensive training, advancing on his attackers with the focused intensity of a man born to violence. The sounds are deafening. Gunfire, breaking glass, shouts in languages I don't recognize. But underneath it all, I hear Vincenzo's voice, cold and controlled, speaking rapid Italian into what must be a phone. Within minutes, The tide turns. The random spray of automatic weapons gives way to disciplined, targeted shots. Through the destroyed window, I see black sedans arriving like sharks drawn to blood, disgorging men in dark suits who move with military precision. The amateur gunfire stops abruptly, replaced by screaming, begging, the wet sounds of violence that make my stomach churn. Then silence. Vincenzo appears beside my desk, kneeling down to meet my eyes. There's blood on his shirt. Not his own, I realize with a mixture of relief and horror. And his hair is disheveled, but he's very much alive. Are you hurt? His hands move over me with gentle efficiency, checking for injuries. I shake my head, not trusting my voice. The adrenaline is beginning to fade, leaving me shaky and disoriented. Good. He helps me to my feet, steadying me when my legs threaten to give out. We need to leave. Now. The police won't be coming. This will be handled internally. The casual certainty in his voice reminds me exactly who I'm dealing with. This isn't a man who relies on law enforcement for protection. This is someone who makes his own rules, enforces his own justice. As he guides me toward the door, I catch sight of the destruction. My office is barely recognizable. Furniture overturned, books scattered, my diplomas hanging askew on bullet-riddled walls. The small space where I've helped so many people heal has become a monument to violence. I'm sorry, Vincenzo says quietly, following my gaze. This is what my world does to beautiful things. But as we step into the hallway, his arm protective around my shoulders, I realize something that should terrify me, but doesn't. In the midst of chaos and gunfire, when men with automatic weapons were trying to kill us both, I felt safer in Vincenzo Torino's arms than I'd ever felt in my life. And that realization changes everything. The safe house sits in Lincoln Park, hidden behind tall hedges and wrought iron gates that look decorative but clearly serve a more serious purpose. Vincenzo's men move through the shadows like phantoms, their presence both reassuring and terrifying. I've been here for 3 days now. 3 days of trying to process what happened in my office while living in a world where armed guards are as common as housekeeping staff. The house itself is beautiful in an understated way. Hardwood floors, exposed brick walls, furniture that whispers expense without shouting it. Nothing like the gaudy mansion I'd imagined, but it's the small details that reveal its true nature. Bulletproof glass in the windows, reinforced doors, security cameras disguised as decorative elements. I'm examining a first edition Hemingway in the library when Vincenzo finds me. He moves silently, a skill I'm beginning to realize he's perfected over years of necessity. Today he wears dark jeans and a black cashmere sweater instead of his usual suit, the casual clothes doing nothing to diminish his commanding presence. How are you sleeping? His voice carries genuine concern, and I notice the dark circles under his eyes have deepened. Better than you, apparently. I close the book, running my fingers over the leather binding. When was the last time you slept more than 2 hours? Sleep is a luxury I can't afford right now. Neither is exhaustion when people are trying to kill you. A smile ghosts across his lips. Still trying to take care of everyone, even in a safe house surrounded by armed guards. It's what I do. I study his face, noting the tension in his jaw, the way his shoulders never fully relax. Besides, we never finished your session Thursday. I think circumstances called for a postponement. All the more reason to continue now, unless you'd prefer to process trauma through gunfights. He's quiet for a moment, those storm-gray eyes searching my face. You realize what you're asking? To continue therapy sessions with a man whose world just tried to kill you? Your world didn't try to kill me. Your enemies did. There's a difference. Is there? The pain in his voice makes my chest ache. I stand, moving closer until I can see the flecks of silver in his eyes, smell the cedar and bergamot cologne that's become as familiar as my own perfume. Yes, there is, because you threw yourself between me and those bullets, without hesitation. Because you're torturing yourself with guilt over something that isn't your fault. Because you're still the same man who lost his mother at 8 and learned the world wasn't safe. His jaw tightens. That man is dangerous to everyone around him. That man is in pain and deserves healing. Even if it costs you everything, the question hangs between us, loaded with implications that make my pulse quicken. We're standing close enough that I can feel the heat radiating from his body, see the faint scar along his jawline that I've wondered about for weeks. "Vincenzo, sit down, please." To my surprise, he complies, settling into the leather armchair by the fireplace. I take the matching chair across from him, the familiar dynamic somehow comforting despite our changed circumstances. "Tell me about the night your mother died." His entire body goes rigid. "Isabella, you said she died when you were 8. You've referenced her death multiple times, but you've never told me what actually happened. Because it's not relevant to. It's the foundation of everything else. The reason you learned not to trust, not to let people close. The reason you've built walls so high that it takes gunfire to make you show genuine emotion." He stares into the fire, flames dancing across his sharp features. When he speaks, his voice is barely above a whisper. "She was supposed to be safe. My father promised she'd be safe." Safe from what? The Benedetti family. Even then they wanted what we had. Territory, respect, fear. His hands clench into fists. There was supposed to be a meeting, neutral ground, a chance to resolve things peacefully. But it wasn't peaceful. They shot her car full of holes on Lakeshore Drive. 8 bullets through the windshield, 4 through the side windows. She died instantly, they said. Didn't suffer. The raw pain in his voice cuts through me like a blade. This isn't the controlled businessman or the dangerous predator. This is an 8-year-old boy who watched his world explode into violence and blood. Where were you when it happened? Home, waiting for her to come back from grocery shopping. She was buying ingredients to make lasagna for my birthday the next day. His laugh is bitter, broken. I kept asking my father when she was coming home. He didn't tell me she was dead until the next morning. "So, you spent your 8th birthday learning your mother had been murdered." I spent my 8th birthday learning that promises of safety are lies people tell to make themselves feel better. I lean forward, aching to touch him, to offer some kind of comfort. "Is that why you couldn't save the men who attacked my office?" His eyes snap to mine, sharp and dangerous. "Those men tried to kill you. They forfeited any right to mercy the moment they pulled triggers in your direction. But you could have wounded them, disabled them. Instead, you killed them all. Yes, because you couldn't protect your mother. But you could protect me." The words hit their mark. Something crumbles in his expression, the careful control finally cracking to reveal the devastation underneath. "I was 8 years old and helpless," he whispers. "I couldn't save her. I couldn't even understand why she wasn't coming home. But when those bullets started flying Thursday, when I saw you on that floor," his voice breaks. "I couldn't fail again. I wouldn't. Vincenzo." I rise from my chair, unable to maintain professional distance when he's bleeding emotionally in front of me. "What happened to your mother wasn't your fault. You were a child who grew up to become exactly what killed her." "No." I kneel beside his chair, placing my hands over his clenched fists. "You grew up to become someone who protects people instead of destroying them. Someone who goes to therapy instead of just burning the world down. Someone who's capable of change." His eyes meet mine, and I see something I've never seen before. Hope. Fragile and afraid to believe in itself. "You really think I can change?" "I think you already have. The man who threw money at me to test my character is gone. The one who threatened his way through our first session disappeared weeks ago. The man sitting here now is someone who cares more about my safety than his own reputation. Isabella." My name on his lips sounds like a prayer. "I never meant for you to get hurt. When I saw those guns pointed at you, you saved me. I put you in danger in the first place. No, your enemies did that. You just refused to let them succeed." We stare at each other in the firelight, and something shifts between us. The careful boundaries I've maintained, the professional distance that's kept us both safe, crumbles like sandcastles against the tide. "You're the first person who's ever made me want to be better," he says softly. "Not stronger, not more feared. Better. You are better. You just can't see it yet." He reaches up to cup my face, his thumb tracing along my cheekbone with exquisite gentleness. "You make me believe I could be the man my mother wanted me to become, instead of the one her death created." The raw vulnerability in his voice undoes me completely. This isn't just patient and therapist anymore. This is a man and woman who've seen each other's souls and found something worth fighting for. "Vincenzo," I whisper. leaning into his touch. "Tell me to stop," he breathes, his thumb brushing across my lower lip. "Tell me this is crossing lines we can't uncross." Instead, I rise up and press my lips to his. The kiss is gentle at first, tentative, as if we're both afraid of breaking something precious. But then his arms come around me, pulling me closer, and gentleness gives way to desperate need. I taste the salt of tears I didn't realize he'd shed, feel the tremor in his hands as they frame my face. When we finally break apart, both breathing hard, he presses his forehead against mine. "I love you," he whispers, the words torn from somewhere deep inside him. "God help me. I love you, and I don't know how to keep you safe from what I am. Then let me help you become something different, even if it takes a lifetime." I smile, my own eyes blurring with tears, especially if it takes a lifetime. Outside, armed guards patrol the grounds, and enemies plot our destruction. But inside this room, beside the dancing firelight, we've found something worth rebuilding a life around, something worth the risk of hoping again. 2 weeks later, I formally submit my termination of the therapeutic relationship between Dr. Isabella Morgan and Vincent Torres to the state licensing board. The paperwork sits heavy in my hands as I seal the envelope, officially ending what began as court-ordered anger management and evolved into something that changed both our lives forever. The ethics are clear. I cannot continue treating a patient with whom I've developed romantic feelings. But more than that, Vincent Torres was a fiction created to protect Vincenzo Torino, and the man I've fallen in love with deserves honesty in all things. The safe house has become our world for these past 2 weeks, a sanctuary where we've learned each other's rhythms without the constraints of professional boundaries. I wake each morning to the scent of espresso and the sound of Vincenzo speaking rapid Italian on his phone, conducting business from the kitchen island while scrambling eggs with the other hand. He cooks the way he does everything else, with precision and confidence, but also with a gentleness I don't think many people get to see. "The licensing board accepted your termination," he says, ending his call and sliding a plate across the marble counter. "Rebecca filed it yesterday." "Good." I accept the perfectly prepared eggs, noting how he's remembered exactly how I like them. Slightly runny, with cracked black pepper. It feels strange, officially ending something that was never really what we thought it was. No regrets? I meet his eyes across the kitchen, these storm-gray depths that have become as familiar to me as my own reflection. "Only that I can't help you heal professionally anymore. You're helping me heal in ways that matter more." He moves around the counter to stand beside me, his hand settling at the small of my back with casual possessiveness. The touch sends warmth spiraling through my chest, as it has every time he's touched me these past 2 weeks. "Isabella, there's something we need to discuss." Something in his tone makes me set down my fork. That sounds ominous. The Benedetti situation is resolved, permanently. I don't ask for details. Over the past 14 days, I've learned which questions to avoid, which aspects of his world I'm better off not understanding. The important thing is that we're safe, which means you can go home if you want to. Back to your apartment, your practice, your normal life. The words hit me like a physical blow. After 2 weeks of waking up beside him, of falling asleep to the sound of his breathing, the thought of returning to my empty apartment feels impossible. "Is that what you want?" His jaw tightens. "What I want and what's best for you aren't the same thing. Let me be the judge of what's best for me." "Isabella." He turns to face me fully, his hands framing my face with exquisite gentleness. "I love you more than I've ever loved anything in my life. But loving me means accepting a world where armed guards are normal, where your safety depends on other people's fear of my name, where you'll never be completely safe because of who I am. And you think I should run from that? I think you should have the choice to run from that." I cover his hands with mine, holding his gaze steadily. "I'm not running, Vincenzo. I'm choosing you, choosing this, choosing us. Whatever that means." Something vulnerable flickers in his expression. "Even knowing what it costs?" "Especially knowing what it costs." He kisses me then, soft and desperate, as if trying to memorize the taste of my lips. When we break apart, he rests his forehead against mine. "There's something else, something I need to show you." An hour later, We're driving through Chicago's North Side in one of his more subtle cars, a silver BMW that screams money without advertising danger. The October air carries the scent of dying leaves and the promise of winter, and I find myself studying Vincenzo's profile as he navigates traffic with the same controlled precision he applies to everything else. We stop outside a building I don't recognize, modern glass and steel rising 12 stories into the gray sky. The ground floor displays are empty, but I can see the bones of what was once a thriving commercial space. What is this place? It was going to be a medical complex. High-end practices, private therapy offices, concierge healthcare. He parks and turns to face me. The developers ran out of money 6 months ago. I bought it last week. My heart starts beating faster. Why? Because you need a new office, and I want you to have exactly what you deserve. Not a cramped space with thin walls and broken security, but something worthy of the work you do. I stare at the building, then at him, overwhelmed by the gesture. Vincenzo, I can't accept something like this. It's too much. It's not a gift. It's an investment. His voice carries a note of uncertainty I've rarely heard from him. I want to be your partner in this. Not just romantically, but professionally. You could build something here. Help people the way you helped me. What are you saying? I'm saying that I want to fund a trauma recovery center. Your trauma recovery center. State-of-the-art facilities, a full staff of counselors and psychiatrists, sliding scale fees so anyone can afford help. Everything you've ever dreamed of building. The magnitude of his offer steals my breath. Why? Because you showed me that healing is possible, even for someone like me. Because the world needs more people who see broken things as worth fixing instead of throwing away. Because I want to do something with my resources that honors what my mother would have wanted instead of just avenging what she lost. Tears blur my vision as the full meaning of his words sinks in. This isn't just about giving me a new office. This is about transformation, about taking everything dark and violent in his world and channeling it toward something beautiful. Show me inside. The interior is a blank canvas, empty spaces waiting to be filled with purpose. But as we walk through the echoing halls, I can see it. Consultation rooms with comfortable chairs and soft lighting. Group therapy spaces designed to feel safe and welcoming. Offices for counselors specializing in everything from domestic violence to addiction recovery. The top 3 floors would be residential, Vincenzo explains, his voice echoing in the empty space. For patients who need intensive care, somewhere safe to heal without outside pressure. Like a safe house for broken souls? Exactly. We stop in what will be the main reception area. Floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of Lincoln Park's autumn colors. I can imagine patients sitting here, gathering courage to face their traumas, supported by people who understand that healing is possible. There's one condition, Vincenzo says quietly. What? Some of my people. They carry wounds that can't be treated in traditional settings. Men who've done terrible things, who've been damaged by terrible things, who need help but can't risk exposure to law enforcement or conventional health care. I study his face, understanding the request beneath his words. You want me to treat members of your organization, only if you're comfortable with it. Only if you think it's something you can do safely. But yes, there are people in my world who deserve a chance to heal, even if they can't seek help through normal channels. The ethical implications are staggering, but so is the potential impact. How many violent men might choose a different path if healing were available to them? How many cycles of trauma and revenge might be broken? They would have to be completely honest with me. No lies, no false names, no pretending to be something they're not. Agreed. And they would have to genuinely want help, not just be going through the motions to appease you or anyone else. Of course. And you would have to promise me that anything discussed in therapy stays confidential, even from you. Even if they tell me things about your business that you'd rather not have revealed. He's quiet for a long moment, and I know I'm asking him to surrender a level of control that goes against every instinct he's developed over 24 years of survival. Yes, he says finally. I promise. I walk to the windows, looking out at the city we'll serve, the lives we might be able to change. When I turn back to him, I see vulnerability in his expression, as if my answer will determine not just our future, but his sense of whether redemption is truly possible for men like him. When can we start construction? The smile that breaks across his face is like sunlight after a storm, transforming him from dangerous predator to the man I've fallen in love with. I'll make some calls. He crosses the empty space to pull me into his arms, and I let myself melt against his chest, breathing in the scent of cedar and bergamot that has become synonymous with safety. Isabella? Yes? I know this isn't the normal way relationships develop. I know there are things about my life that will never be conventional or safe or easy. Are you trying to talk me out of this again? I'm trying to make sure you know what you're choosing. I pull back to meet his eyes. I'm choosing the man who threw himself between me and bullets without hesitation. I'm choosing someone who wants to build healing centers instead of just building walls. I'm choosing you, Vincenzo Torino, exactly as you are, and exactly as you're becoming. He kisses me then, deep and claiming, a promise sealed with touch and breath, and the absolute certainty that whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Outside, Chicago hums with its usual chaos, traffic and sirens and the million small dramas of urban life. But inside this empty building, surrounded by possibilities and plans, we've found something precious enough to build a future around. I wake to darkness and the acrid smell of chloroform, clinging to my sinuses. My head throbs with each heartbeat, and when I try to move, zip ties bite into my wrists. The surface beneath me rocks gently. A boat, I realize with growing terror. Through the small porthole beside me, I can see the lights of Chicago's skyline glittering in the distance. Memory returns in fragments. The parking garage beneath our new building. The excitement of showing Vincenzo the architectural plans. The shadow that moved behind a concrete pillar just as something pressed against my face, chemical sweet and suffocating. I've been here before, in a way. Not physically, but psychologically. Every trauma victim I've ever treated has described this moment, the sudden understanding that control has been stripped away, that survival depends on intelligence rather than strength. Ah, the famous Dr. Morgan awakens. The voice carries a slight accent, different from Vincenzo's smooth Italian inflections. Russian, maybe, or Eastern European. I turn toward the sound and see a man silhouetted against the cabin lights, tall, lean, with silver-streaked hair and cold eyes that reflect the artificial illumination like a predator's. You must be Anton Benedetti, I say, keeping my voice steady despite the fear coursing through my veins. Very good. Your boyfriend has mentioned me, I take it. Former patient, I correct automatically, then immediately regret the distinction. Showing weakness to men like this is tantamount to suicide. He laughs, the sound carrying no warmth. Ah, yes, the therapeutic relationship. How clinical of you. Tell me, doctor, did your Hippocratic oath cover falling in love with murderers? Did yours cover kidnapping psychologists? The backhanded slap comes fast, snapping my head to the side and filling my mouth with the taste of copper. Stars explode across my vision, but I force myself not to cry out. Men like Benedetti feed on fear and pain, denying them that satisfaction is the only power I have left. You have spirit. I can see why Torino is obsessed. Benedetti settles into a chair across from me, studying my face with clinical detachment. He's destroyed 3 generations of my family's work because of you. Do you understand that? I understand that he defended himself when your people tried to kill him. Self-defense. Benedetti tastes the words like wine. Is that what he calls systematically dismantling my organization? Turning my own men against me? Offering them better terms to switch sides? This is news to me. In our 2 months together, Vincenzo has been careful not to discuss business operations in detail, protecting me from knowledge that could endanger us both. But it makes sense. He's too intelligent to rely purely on violence when strategy would be more effective. What do you want from me? I want to watch Vincenzo Torino break. Benedetti's smile is razor-sharp. He spent 20 years building walls around his heart, convincing himself that caring about nothing makes him invincible. Then you walked into his life and undid decades of careful emotional architecture in a matter of weeks. So this is about revenge. This is about balance. He took my son, my nephews, my legacy. Now I take the one thing he values more than power. The casual way he discusses murder makes my skin crawl. but I force myself to think like a therapist. What drives a man like Benedetti? What psychological levers might I be able to manipulate? You're afraid, I observe. His eyes sharpen dangerously. Excuse me? This elaborate kidnapping, the psychological torture, it's not about revenge. It's about fear. Vincenzo outmaneuvered you, and now you're terrified that everyone will see you as weak. Another slap, harder this time. Blood trickles from my split lip, but I continue. You could have just killed me, put a bullet in my head, and dumped my body where he'd find it. But you didn't, because that wouldn't prove your superiority. You need him to suffer publicly, to beg, to show weakness, because if he doesn't break, then everyone will know that you've already lost. Shut up. How many of your own men are having doubts right now? How many are wondering if Vincenzo's offer is more attractive than loyalty to a leader who can't protect them? I said shut up. This slap sends me sprawling, the chair tipping backward until my head cracks against the cabin wall. Pain explodes through my skull, but through it I hear something that makes my blood run cold, the sound of phones buzzing simultaneously throughout the boat. Benedetti's expression changes from rage to confusion, to fear in the space of heartbeats. He snatches his phone, and I watch his face drain of color as he reads whatever message has appeared. Boss, one of his men calls from the upper deck. We've got problems. Through the porthole, I can see lights moving on the water. Boats approaching from multiple directions, their searchlights cutting through the darkness like swords. The cavalry has arrived, but I know better than to feel relieved. When men like Vincenzo come for what's theirs, the resulting violence leaves no room for mercy. Benedetti grabs my arm, hauling me upright with brutal efficiency. Move. He drags me up the stairs to the main deck, where his men stand at the railings with automatic weapons. But there's uncertainty in their postures, doubt in their eyes. These are soldiers facing an enemy they're no longer sure they can defeat. How many boats? Benedetti demands. 8, maybe 10. They're surrounding us. And the shoreline? Blocked. Torino's people are everywhere. A spotlight suddenly blazes from the largest approaching vessel, illuminating our deck in harsh white light. Through the glare, I can see Vincenzo standing at the bow like an avenging angel, his dark hair whipping in the lake wind. Anton Benedetti, his voice carries across the water through electronic amplification, cold and implacable as winter. You have something that belongs to me. She belongs to herself, Benedetti shouts back, but I can hear the desperation beneath his bravado. Isabella. Vincenzo's voice softens slightly when he says my name. Are you hurt? I want to answer, but Benedetti presses a gun to my temple, the metal cold against my skin. One word, and your brains decorate the deck, but I don't need to speak. The blood on my face tells Vincenzo everything he needs to know. Even from this distance, I can see his expression change. The controlled mask finally slipping to reveal something primitive and murderous. You shouldn't have touched her face, Anton. The quiet menace in those words makes several of Benedetti's men exchange glances. This is what I've been trying to explain. They're not just facing Vincenzo's anger, they're facing the wrath of a man who has nothing left to lose. Here's what's going to happen. Vincenzo continues, his voice carrying easily across the water. You're going to release Isabella, unharmed. In return, I'll allow you to live. You're in no position to make demands, Torino. I have your woman, and my men have enough firepower to turn your boats into driftwood. Look behind you, Anton. The command is delivered with such quiet certainty that Benedetti can't help but turn. Standing at the stern of his own boat, having somehow boarded without detection, are 4 men in dark suits. Not Benedetti's men, Vincenzo's. They move with the fluid precision of professional soldiers, and suddenly Benedetti's crew find themselves outnumbered on their own vessel. How? Benedetti whispers. You recruited from the bottom of the barrel, one of Vincenzo's men says conversationally. Half your crew were already on my payroll. The betrayal hits Benedetti like a physical blow. His gun wavers against my temple as he realizes the extent of his miscalculation. Vincenzo hasn't just outmaneuvered him tactically. He's been systematically destroying his organization from within for weeks. This was never about the shooting at Isabella's office. I realize aloud. That was just the opening move. You've been planning this takeover for months. Vincenzo's slight smile is visible even across the water. My psychologist is very perceptive. Former psychologist, Benedetti snarls, but there's no strength left in his voice. No, I say quietly, my words carrying in the sudden stillness. Current partner, in business and in life. The distinction matters more than I can explain. I'm not just the woman Vincenzo loves. I'm his equal, his collaborator, someone who chose this world with full knowledge of its costs. And apparently, someone who's learned to manipulate dangerous men with nothing more than psychological insight and perfectly timed provocations. Anton, Vincenzo calls out. You have 30 seconds to release her before I demonstrate why people fear the Torino name. But I'm already moving. Years of treating violent patients have taught me to recognize when someone's grip on reality begins to slip. Benedetti's hand trembles against my temple, his breathing becoming rapid and shallow. He's about to do something desperate and stupid. You know what's interesting about men like you? I say conversationally, as if we're discussing the weather instead of my imminent death. You always underestimate the intelligence of your enemies, especially female enemies. What are you talking about? The chloroform you used. You gave me just enough to knock me unconscious, but not enough to keep me under for the full trip. I've been awake for the last 20 minutes, listening to your men talk, learning the layout of this boat, counting exits and weapons. His grip tightens on the gun. So I know that the man behind you is having doubts about your leadership. I know that your ammunition is running low because you spent most of it on that failed attack at my office. And I know that 3 of your remaining men are texting with Vincenzo's people, negotiating the terms of their surrender. The last part is a guess, but Benedetti's expression tells me I've hit the mark. Paranoia wars with rage in his eyes as he glances around at his own men, no longer sure who he can trust. You're lying. Am I? Check your phone, Anton. See how many of your loyal soldiers have been feeding information to Vincenzo for weeks. He makes the mistake of looking away for a split second, reaching for his phone with his free hand. It's all the opening I need. I drive my elbow backward into his solar plexus, while simultaneously dropping to my knees, breaking his grip on both me and the weapon. The gun skitters across the deck as Benedetti doubles over, gasping for air. By the time he recovers, Vincenzo's men have secured the entire vessel, and the man I love is striding across the deck toward me with murder in his storm-gray eyes. Isabella. He kneels beside me, his hands gentle as they check for injuries. Are you hurt? Nothing that won't heal, I manage, though my head still throbs and my wrists are raw from the zip ties. He cuts through my restraints with a knife that appears from somewhere inside his jacket, then helps me to my feet. Only then does he turn his attention to Benedetti, who's been forced to his knees by 2 armed guards. 24 years, Vincenzo says quietly. 24 years I've been waiting for this moment. For revenge? I ask. For justice. The distinction matters to him, I realize. This isn't just about satisfying bloodlust. It's about closing a circle that began with an 8-year-old boy watching his world explode into violence. But as I watch him approach the man who killed his mother, who tried to kill me, who represents everything dark and broken in both our pasts, I understand something crucial. The man I fell in love with doesn't need to become a monster to protect what he loves. He's already evolved beyond that. He's learned that sometimes the greatest victory isn't in destroying your enemies, but in proving that you've become someone better than they could ever be. 1 year later, I stand before the full-length mirror in St. Alphonsus Cathedral's bridal suite, adjusting the delicate lace of my grandmother Carmela's wedding dress. The ivory silk fits perfectly after months of careful alterations, and the antique pearl necklace Vincenzo gave me catches the afternoon sunlight streaming through Gothic stained glass windows. You look absolutely radiant, Rebecca says from behind me, her reflection appearing beside mine in the ornate mirror. She's been invaluable this past year, helping coordinate not just our wedding, but the complex logistics of launching the Torino Center for Trauma Recovery. Today, she serves as my matron of honor, though I suspect her real role is ensuring everything runs with the precision Vincenzo demands in all aspects of his life. I look nervous. I counter, though I can't stop the smile spreading across my face. Terrified, actually. Of marrying him or of the wedding itself. Neither. I'm terrified of how happy I am. The admission hangs in the air between us. After everything we've survived, the kidnapping, the systematic dismantling of the Benedetti organization, the months of building something beautiful from ashes of violence. Happiness still feels fragile, too precious to trust completely. Through the tall windows, I can see guests arriving at the cathedral. The guest list reads like a who's who of Chicago society, mixed with faces that would make federal prosecutors take notice. Legitimate businessmen sit beside men whose fortunes were built in shadows, united by their respect for the man I'm about to marry. The Torino Center opened 6 months ago, housed in the same building where Vincenzo first showed me his vision for our future. The results have exceeded even my most optimistic projections. We've treated over 200 patients, from war veterans struggling with PTSD, to domestic violence survivors, to members of various organizations who needed healing, but couldn't seek it through traditional channels. The confidentiality we maintain is absolute, the security impenetrable, and the success rate remarkable. Vincenzo kept his promise about letting me treat his people without interference. In fact, he's become one of my greatest success stories, though I can no longer be his therapist. We work together now as partners in every sense, him providing resources and protection, while I provide expertise and compassion. A soft knock interrupts my thoughts. My heart skips, hoping it's Vincenzo, despite the superstition about seeing the bride before the ceremony. Instead, Thomas Walsh, Rebecca's husband and one of Vincenzo's most trusted advisors, appears in the doorway. The groom is getting impatient, he reports with a genuine smile. He's threatened to drag you to the altar himself if you're not ready in 10 minutes. Tell him I'm worth waiting for. I think he already knows that. The organ music begins, the processional that will carry me toward my future. Dr. Martinez, my former colleague and mentor, waits to walk me down the aisle. When my father refused to attend, claiming he couldn't support his daughter marrying a criminal, Dr. Schiappo, Martinez stepped in without hesitation. "Isabella," he says, his eyes bright with unshed tears as the massive doors swing open. "You look beautiful." The cathedral's interior reveals itself in all its Gothic splendor. Every pew is filled, hundreds of faces turning toward us with smiles and tears, and the kind of joy that accompanies witnessing true love triumph over impossible odds. But I only have eyes for the man standing at the altar. Vincenzo wears a midnight blue tuxedo that transforms him into something even more devastating than usual. His dark hair is perfectly styled, his posture commanding even in this moment of vulnerability. When our eyes meet across the length of the cathedral, his carefully controlled mask finally slips completely, revealing wonder and love and gratitude so profound it takes my breath away. The walk down the aisle feels both eternal and instant. Every step carries me away from the woman I was, toward the woman I'm becoming. Past patients smile from the pews, colleagues from the medical community nod their approval, and members of Vincenzo's organization watch with the respect due to their future boss's wife. When I finally reach the altar, Dr. Martinez places my hand in Vincenzo's with a gentle smile. The contact sends electricity up my arm, the same spark that's existed between us since that first session when he tried to bribe me with $100 bills. "You're beautiful," he murmurs, for my ears alone. "You're not bad yourself." The priest begins the ceremony, his words echoing in the vaulted space. But I'm lost in Vincenzo's storm-gray eyes. I see our entire journey reflected there. The cautious beginning, the dangerous middle, the explosive resolution, and now this perfect moment of peace. When it comes time for vows, Vincenzo produces a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket. His hands shake slightly as he unfolds it, and I realize this is the first time I've seen him nervous about anything. "Isabella," he begins, his voice carrying clearly through the cathedral despite his nerves. "A year ago, you tore up my money and told me to behave like a civilized person. You had no idea you were talking to a man who'd forgotten what civilization looked like." Gentle laughter ripples through the congregation, warm and approving. "You showed me that healing is possible, even for someone who'd built his life around violence and control. You taught me that strength isn't about how much fear you can inspire, but about how much love you can protect. You proved that some things are worth changing for, worth fighting for, worth risking everything to keep safe." My eyes fill with tears as his words wash over me, each one carefully chosen and deeply meant. "I promise to spend every day of our life together becoming the man you see when you look at me." I promise to protect not just your body but your dreams, your work, your beautiful heart that sees hope in broken things. I promise to love you with the same intensity I once reserved for revenge, and to build something beautiful with you from the ashes of everything dark in my past." He folds the paper, his eyes never leaving mine. "You tamed me, Isabella Morgan. Not through force or manipulation, but through love so pure it transformed everything I thought I knew about myself. Thank you for seeing the man I could become instead of just the monster I was. When it's my turn, I don't need notes. The words come straight from my heart, flowing as naturally as breathing. Vincenzo, when you walked into my office that first day, you were broken, but you were also brave enough to keep coming back, honest enough to let me see your wounds, strong enough to do the hard work of healing. You taught me that love isn't about fixing someone. It's about choosing to grow together, to face the darkness as partners, to build something stronger than either of us could create alone." I reach up to touch the scar along his jawline, a gesture so familiar now it feels like coming home. I choose you, not despite your past, but because of how you've transformed it into something meaningful. I choose this life we're building together, this work we're doing, this love that's turned both of us into better versions of ourselves. You didn't need taming, my love. You just needed someone who could see your true nature and love it completely. The priest pronounces us husband and wife. And when Vincenzo kisses me, the cathedral erupts in applause and cheers, but I barely hear it over the sound of my own heartbeat, over the whispered, "I love you," he breathes against my lips. The reception flows seamlessly at the Torino family estate, a sprawling mansion on Lakeshore Drive that speaks to old money and older traditions. Tables laden with Italian delicacies fill the gardens, while a string quartet plays classical music that mingles with laughter and conversation in multiple languages. I dance with my new husband under strings of lights that turn the evening into something magical. His arms around me feel like safety and adventure combined, promise and fulfillment in perfect balance. "Any regrets?" he murmurs against my ear as we sway to the music. "Only that we can't do this every day. The wedding or the marriage. The moment when I get to choose you all over again." Later, after the cake has been cut and the heartfelt toasts have been made by both his family and mine, we slip away from our own reception to walk along the lake. The lights of Chicago sparkle across the water like fallen stars, and I can see the building that houses our treatment center glowing softly in the distance. "What are you thinking about?" Vincenzo asks, following my gaze toward the city we've chosen to serve. "Everything we've built. Everything we're going to build." Second thoughts? I turn in his arms. This man who was once my patient, and is now my partner in every sense of the word. Never. But I do have one question. What's that? What would have happened if I hadn't torn up that $100 bill? If I'd just taken your money and let you walk away? He considers this serious.